Shalom everybody, and welcome back to the 2020 Homeschool Family Conference, and I'm here with my handsome husband, Kraig.
How we doing, everybody? It's good to see y'all.
I have him here today. Some of you may have seen or heard us on the TorahHome.com radio shows. We were on Hebrew Nation Radio, and we're not doing that anymore because we just haven't had the time. But one of the things that Kraig would always do on those radio episodes was talk about how creative he is. So we wanted to bring him on today. We're going to be talking about the benefits of notebooking for both right-brained and left-brained people.
Like her.
For both parents and children.
Yep.
And Kraig, what makes you right-brained and me left-brained? Why did you even say that I am left-brained? I'm not sure how to take this.
Well, I think a lot of it deals with the fact that she is very analytical. She likes lists. She likes things put in order, and is very good at doing those kind of things and organizing, structure. She's a great curriculum writer for that reason. I, on the other hand, yeah, list. I, on the other hand, am more right brain, where I like to be a little more creative. I like to be more into drawing and making things and constructing things. I like to do things with designing and really get into that aspect
making it look pretty.
Yeah, making it look
pretty. You're the one who makes the covers for our books at Foundations Press. I do not make a cover. You wouldn't want to see. I would have a cover that would be like white with black or gray words, Times New Roman font.
Yep.
This is the name of the book.
Get the thing done and have it done. If it has the words, it's done.
As soon as possible. Let's get the information out. Yeah.
Then she hands it to me, and I take care of getting all the pretty on.
Like 3 weeks later. No, just teasing. Because it seems like right-brained people, it feels slow to me. I'm like, come on, let's get it done. And you're like, it could be improved.
The process is important.
As the end result.
The process is important. You're like, as long as I can get it done out there, we're ready to go.
Yep, so it's a good thing we have both of us. Okay, so we're going to talk about notebooking today because one of the features of our curriculum at Homeschooling Torah and Foundations Press is that we don't just give tests for everything. We want to have our kids do something that's called notebooking, and it's going to take a lot of forms. We call it notebooking, but I want, if you can get anything else today, to realize that this could look like a lot of different things depending on your personality and the way your kids function too. So what are some benefits? Well, let me say, what's a notebook? What do you think a notebook is?
Well, when I think of notebooking, I think of the opportunity to have kids not just sit there and write or do kind of worksheets and things like that, but to have opportunities to take what the information that we're providing or you're providing as a parent and to be creative with it and find creative ways to put it down somewhere that they would, in different ways, be able to remember those things and be able to have a better chance of having recollection of them at a future time.
So we use the hear, learn, keep, do method. Hearing is when you're sitting with mom and dad, or the kids are sitting with mom and dad, and they're hearing you read from a book, maybe from the Bible, maybe from your history book, maybe you're watching a YouTube, and you're hearing the information. But then you have learning and keeping, which is guarding, and that's where notebooking comes in, right?
Yes.
Because learning, how would you use it for learning?
Well, a lot of it is, so like, let's think of history as a good example.
I can get a book. Let me get it off the shelf. I think. Okay, we got a book here. His Renaissance and Reformation. I'll pick up something. Okay. Let's see. Oh, well, we could do Martin Luther.
Okay.
Martin Luther is escaping because they're coming after him because he was teaching things that went against the Pope.
They considered him a heretic, right?
Okay, so we read a few chapters.
So we do that. We read through these chapters. We talk about Germany. We talk about the Pope, Roman Catholicism.
So what could you do for Germany?
You could start with maybe say something simple as like a map. And then find out where Wittenberg is, which is where Martin Luther was based, would be one key example. And kind of show the kids where this is happening in the world.
So that'd be a great way to do it.
That's a simple way. Then you could go on and you could add, maybe you could find pictures of the Wittenberg Chapel and stick them there. You can find maybe you can find online, I don't know if they do or not, but like a picture of what the 95 Theses that he nailed to the chapel is. You could take a picture and put that in there, you know, print it out, put it on there, or they could color it, something to make it look like that. So that they would get these key points of what the story was about, and they can, and my idea is you have it on a page or a couple pages, and that you can stick into a notebook with 3 hole punches that they can keep them together.
Does it have to be a binder with 3 hole punches?
No, in fact, I've heard of a lot of people, like, they do like manila envelopes. Or not manila envelopes, manila folders, excuse me.
Yeah,
one
like
of those
you would
manilas.
put, like the old time file folders.
Yeah, file folders, and you can have them where you can 3-hole punch those too, but you have them open and they have 2-hole big pages to put as much information as they want on there. Timelines you can stick at the top of the timeline of what's going on there. The pictures throughout it, you could have them make things that they can fold up or pocket, like little envelopes that you can stick pockets in and things like that.
He's so much more creative.
And through that, really have the opportunity to kind of make the story or the information come alive.
Okay. So some of the benefits that I wrote down, you can keep this as a record, a memory, even a legal record of what you've done in your homeschooling.
Yep.
So if you use manila folders like that, you could put them into a plastic crate that you can get at any store and, you know, hang them as file folders. But if you're using the binders, then you're gonna want to probably have a place to keep your kids' binders through the years, so that you can, you know, keep
Whether
them as
it's,
a memory.
you know, maybe it's on, if you have like a little bookshelf in the kids' room, maybe they can keep those kind of things there.
We don't do
And
that. That's a good idea.
I know, and then they could go back, and when some days when they're bored or something, they could go and leaf through those things and play with them almost and find all that information, at least.
Yeah. So we do something like that with our preschool curriculum, where every week the little ones make a character quality or something that they're learning that week, and they make a page for their notebook, and then during their quiet rest time every afternoon, maybe before a nap or after a nap, they can look through it, and it's really cool.
Awesome.
So, okay, we like notebooking because it uses more of the 5 senses.
Yes.
Now, in a second, I want to talk about how we left-brained learners might not use the same senses as you would use.
Absolutely.
But still, no matter, I think we could use all 5 senses. It'd be more difficult for taste, I guess. Although you could take pictures of someone cooking, you know, a meal from Germany.
Yes.
If we were going to use that.
Yep.
And then take pictures and put that in the book as a memory. But most of the time it's going to be more visual, textures. Textures are important to write.
Yes, good thought on that too, because so like the color of or the types of paper that are being used. So like if you could vary paper by getting brown paper bags or something along that lines, or crepe paper, paper mache, those kind of things allow for unique textures and stuff to be able to bring that information alive. You can have kids draw on them, or you can have them wrap something special up in there, or get a plastic jewel or something like that and wrap it up and stick that in a little leather, fake leather pouch that they could glue onto the page or something along those lines. Just really make the information really pop for them.
Absolutely. Okay, it's good to develop storytelling in your child. Helps them to learn to become a teacher. So one of the things we emphasize in our curriculum is that the younger ages, they are learning knowledge. And that in the middle ages, they're starting to get a better understanding of the facts. And then towards high school, with wisdom, they're learning to communicate back to others what they've learned. So if they can't learn to storytell, to discuss, to explain, then they kind of need to go from being the learner to the teacher and becoming like an expert.
Yes.
So, okay. One of the very key points for our curriculum is that this can replace standard grading. So you need grading and spelling. You know, the word is spelled right or it's not, but you could do notebooking for spelling. How could you do that? Like if you wanted to be really right-brained about this, I guess your kids could make, how many of you back in 1985 made the big, I don't know how many of our customers were alive in 1985 like I was, but in 1985 I was in 5th grade and I made the big bubble letters in my spelling notebook and colored around them and then put stickers all around it. That is a form of notebooking.
Or you could get stickers with all the different letters and have them use the stickers to spell out,
Yeah.
and that might get a little expensive after a
No,
while.
I
but
think you can get them really cheap. You can get like 5,000 stickers on one thing, and that's
Okay.
not too bad. You can watch for deals. Okay, but like math, you're going to have your test each week, and it's going to have more limited uses of notebooking. I'm supposing you could in the math drills that the teacher does with the students each week. We have a lot of story problems and ways to act out things, but especially on the fourth and fifth day of every week. But generally, this lends itself better to Bible, history, science. Those are my
Yeah.
three that I think we would use it the most.
most for, yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
And how would you grade that? You were a high school teacher. How did you have anything like this in the classroom in the public school? And how do you grade something like this fairly?
Yeah, I did something along this lines one time with the French and Indian War. We were studying that as a subject in United States history, and what I did is I took a lot of worksheets and things like that, but they weren't like just worksheets where you're filling out just the information, but it had a lot of coloring and it had a lot of pictures on them. And I kind of tried to get them to intersperse the two so that some of the kids, so they had a little bit of having to, go do some research and write down some information, but they also had things where they were coloring flags and doing maps and looking up famous people, and maybe they could find their pictures and stick those in there that were dealing with generals and political leaders and stuff that were involved with these topics. And so bringing all that together, and they had like a packet, and that became the unit of the French and Indian War for them. And then they could turn that in, and I could see the information, and see where if they've gotten the information correct that they were supposed to research, see if they were accurate in their flags and colors and things like that, if they did a good job at doing the artwork, and then just slop it on there. And
Yeah, I think that you can always tell when a student is going about it as quickly as possible so they can get on to something more interesting in their day, like
Yeah.
video games, or whether they are actually putting their whole heart into it.
or going outside,
Or going outside or whatever is more interesting.
Playing
And
in
it's
general.
not that every student is going to be that interested. Not every student is going to be right-brained like him. We'll get to the left-brained stuff in a second. But either way, whatever your hand finds to do, you should do it with all your might.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to, I have found, and maybe this is my left-brain side, but to give, between 3 to 5 expectations, and you could just write them up on the board, because I use a whiteboard or a blackboard every day in our school, so you could just write up there, these are some of my minimum expectations I want your paper to have. If you're doing Martin Luther, I want to have a picture of him. I want to have when he was born and died. I want to know where he lived, and then tell me maybe 2 or 3 significant things he did in his life, and don't give, by then they
Yeah.
should already have a lot of that information from the here part of the curriculum. So when they're learning and keeping, they might not have too much research to do,
yeah.
but they need to be able to show that they learned it.
Another way I could think of doing stuff like that also is doing like mind mapping or web.
Can you
Yeah.
explain what that means?
Well, so instead of just having the information in a linear form going down like on lines, that's left brain. Us right brain people might like to do like a diagram where you have in the center maybe Martin Luther and draw a circle around it, and then you have coming out from him all these different spokes with maybe his life, and then what he was known for, and down here I'm trying to think, Roman Catholicism and its problems with him, or this theology down here, and you can kind of break that down, and then you come off of there with all these different things, and before it's all done, you can see all this information laid out in this big web or pattern, and sometimes that is very beneficial for right brain type people to
Yeah.
remember information.
One of the things we talk about in our writing curriculum is that we have 6 serving servants that we can use, and that's who, what, when, where, why, and how. And just if you say them enough, and they are in the curriculum so that we will review them, especially in the writing curriculum, which the writing curriculum will help you. Word power will have this as well. So who, what, when, where, why, and how. If the child has answered all of those questions, this was a first grader. A first grader can answer those questions on their level. You shouldn't expect a first grader to be doing what a ninth grader would do.
Yeah, you can't wax eloquently for 5 minutes.
No.
As a third grader, because just don't, or a first grader, even a third grader, because they don't have that information inside of them to be able to regurgitate it yet to you.
Yep. And you might, it's okay, Mom, to do the writing for them. If writing is something like actual physical handwriting is something that they struggle with, you could do it for them. We have a typing curriculum at Homeschooling Torah. If they really hate writing as they're getting older, if the handwriting is troublesome for them, then try typing. Yeah. That's certainly fine. And I've even had students, including one of my own, I don't know if you know which one of them is very much not right-brained. He's left-brained, he's very analytical, he likes to fix things and tinker with his hands, but he hated writing. It was enough to bring him to tears. And so we would have him make a PowerPoint presentation on the computer, and he liked that better. I can't say it was ever his favorite subject, but he liked it better. So, okay, speaking of, so I have a list here. This was me making up what we were going to talk about today, and honestly, I put down, it's kind of funny to me, I put right, left. Okay, I put the left brain on the right side of the paper. I get them mixed up. And the right brain over here, I put all the benefits, and down here I have some more stuff we're going to talk about at the end. But as you can see, it's just lists, where what he's talking about would be more like a graphical circles and pattern. Yeah, you were going to show us this book.
I have a book that kind of really illustrates what this is about. It's called Dragons here.
By Master Books. It's an excellent book. Yeah. It's all about dragons from a creationist point of view.
So you can see here it's got a lot of graphics and stuff, a lot of pictures and things to go along with the script. But as you can see, they don't just stay there.
So here closer.
Yeah, you get a lot of, so you have over here, you've got all these maps and stuff going on, and then but over here you can see they have these little envelopes with little things that you can pull out, and these have more information and various things involved in them. And this to me is kind of the concept really exemplifies the concept of right brain lap booking. So here they have a little pamphlet. You could either, if you found a pamphlet, like say you went to a museum and dealing with the subject of what you were talking about, and they got some pamphlets, they could glue those on a page and have those there that they can go back and look at a future time. And see, the thing that I think is really cool about notebooking is that it's something your kids can go back to over and over again and really remember what's going on. Hopefully I'm not taking this from my wife and what she's going to talk about with left brain stuff, but left brain people like to look, I think of it more as a journal. And so
looking back on it is really nice.
Yeah, so you can see these things that you're talking about over and over again, and kids are actually interested, and so they can do stuff like this.
You could do this, glue, glue some extra pages on.
Definitely, and so you can see this really gives you a lot of good visual ideas of what things can happen, but you can see how well this would go with history.
Got a cool timeline
science,
at the bottom.
Yeah. So if you're talking about electricity, you can have light bulbs. You can have picture of Thomas Edison. You can have a map of all the famous places in the world, famous discoveries with electricity. You can have the first nuclear power plant, or all these just tons of things that go on that you could just put in there. And this was, I thought, a really good illustration of
It is a really good illustration. I want to show you an illustration of how left brain people work. Can I do that?
Yes,
so this
absolutely.
is a book I have on my shelf called, and by the way, this is not from a creationist point of view. If you might want to buy this book, just be aware of that. I like the book, Thing Explainer. Complicated stuff in simple words. I think the difference between right brain and left brain is really one thinks in pictures, one thinks in words. I think in words, he thinks in pictures. And I like this book. It still has all kinds of illustrations and diagrams, but lots of words. Okay, so let me show you a good example. That's not a good example.
I still think this is just as good for right brain on this one too.
But there's just words everywhere, and they have arrows to things. And let me find one. I had a page and I lost it that was just such a good example. But, oh, there it is. I mean, it's got charts. Everything is displayed very linearly. Is that the word? In lines across and down. And I just think like that. But they've got little arrows pointing things. And, that's kind of more how my brain thinks. And it is a visual. I always called myself a visual learner. But my visual learner is maybe a little different than your visual learner.
Yours has to be definitely...
organized.
in a very organized,
I like it organized.
Like this, This is how hers. Mine might have things like over here, and they'd be turned sideways, and then some decorations, a little doodling down in this corner.
I hardly ever doodle.
Yes.
In fact, I have a 400-page journal that I use to take notes when he teaches on Sabbath and at our congregation. And in the 400 pages, my friends and I were laughing because there was one doodling in the entire 400 pages, and it was a bullseye because we were talking about how sin, missing the mark when you hit Torah. Anyway, I don't doodle, but you doodle
all the time.
All the time. Yeah, I think if all you had was your hand and a pen, you would doodle on it. So it's just the way we are. So let me just talk real quick about some differences. Journaling. I love journaling, and what that means for me is not necessarily a diary of, on this day I did this. Some kids love that.
Yeah.
They love making diaries. I find that, especially in the middle school age, that kids really like to do that.
Yeah.
Or tell stories. And I think some of them that are visual learners, like you, might even think in a story where I might think in like a teacher. First this, then this, then this. And I've always been that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's okay. Let your kids, if the best way they can explain back what they've learned that day is to tell it in a story, fantastic. They don't have to tell it in a list. Let's see. Because it is important to develop words in both right-brained and left-brained students. Both of them will need to eventually learn to write a paragraph, although maybe the father doesn't call everybody to write paragraphs their whole life. But I think to exist in our world, we do need to learn to write.
Well, the good example is our analytical son that we were talking about.
Yes.
He's now an electrician's apprentice. You give him a motor or something like that, and he loves taking it apart, but I doubt he would ever really want to write a paragraph without absolutely having to.
No, and even in college, he hasn't needed to write too many paragraphs. He has had to do a lot of math.
Yes.
But
and illustrations even on diagramming electrical circuits and things like that.
And even for the couple classes where he's had to write a little bit, they allowed him to type it and get it over. It wasn't like a deep. We have another daughter who wants to go into as an English major. She loves literature. She loves reading. Obviously, there's a difference in their brains. So one of the things that you should check, though, in your children's notebooking, one thing that you do want to check in their grading is that they do use proper grammar, that they do use, when you tell them to use sentences, they should have a capital letter at the beginning of a sentence and a proper punctuation at the end. If you don't say to do it as a sentence, then don't. One of the things that bugs me as a left-brain person is that if you're labeling things and you have one up here that's a sentence and one down here that's a sentence fragment, that just drives me crazy. So I'm either all sentence fragments or all sentences.
Yeah.
And I doubt you would even care.
Well, I probably would not even look at those initially. It would have to be definitely something I would set up beforehand, saying this is something you need to make sure to do.
Yep.
Otherwise, I couldn't obviously complain if they didn't follow exactly those rules.
It's something I think about.
So make sure that if you want those, if that's part of what you're looking for is a good handwriting or good grammar or things like this, that you make sure that those rules are, that you tell your children those things ahead of time.
Or that you have lots of whiteout. And because you don't have to use pencil, there's cool little whiteout pens now. They work great, and you can cover up a whole host of mistakes. And I'm honestly, the kids and I out here at the table, the table's right over there. We have whiteout pens on the table every single day, and we use them. And even the best of rules up on the board, if you're using because it's nice to use pretty pens and pretty markers, colored pencils and things, but those don't erase well. It's hard to cover them up. So whiteout pens to me, are great.
Job.
What about spelling is important though. Learning to apply the spelling they've learned you can take all the spelling tests you want, but the spelling does not come easily to everyone. I may be left-brained, but spelling does not come easily to me. I still make mistakes of spelling in my 40s. So, but for a child, you might evaluate was that because they've just never come across any kind of spelling like that before. You could take spelling mistakes and you don't want to overcorrect so much to the point that they become discouraged and think that they never can do anything right.
Yep.
But you could take the spelling mistakes that they've made, add them to their spelling list for that week, and then or save them, Mom, in your teacher notebook until they come across that spelling rule. If they're still in maybe 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, and they're still getting their basic spelling rules, you could add those to your notebook to remember to teach them a little bit about it. So, okay. I would say for your side, we already said you like drawings, maps, photographs, textural elements. What about going out? Nature study is what it's generally called in homeschooling circles. I like calling it creation study. But anyway, when you go outside, you can gather leaves.
Yep.
How would a right-brain person go on a nature walk and learn about, say, poison ivy?
You go and touch it.
I don't know.
On that note, we have a daughter who just went last week and went out in the forest with doing some stuff with friends, and unfortunately, it seems to have picked up some.
That's why it's on my
poison
mind.
ivy. Yeah. I was of all the things you could talk about in the nature study. I don't know. Or
well, you want a nature
study.
study. She did know what it looked like. She doesn't know when she got it. But how would you? So what would you do?
Well, with poison ivy, obviously, you could go out and kind of look for it. You don't want to go and like touch it beforehand. You don't want the kids to be the ones looking for it. You would do it, but then when you see it, you could show them that. But you can also go online and you could find pictures of it beforehand or in a book at the library or something like that, and find that, and then go out, take that book out, and start having your kids try to find something that would be poison ivy. Obviously, you don't want them to be touching and feeling, because if they actually did find it, even on accident, you might get having an issue. And of course, some kids, if you don't know they're allergic to something like that, and you find some, they could
bad example.
Yeah.
Bad example.
So,
let's do maple leaves.
Yes, let's do just do leaves in general, right?
Okay.
And so when you think of leaves in general, you can. I had the kids last year go out with me, and we went through a forest that had a lot of variety of trees, and so we went through and we looked for. You had to find leaves that were different than what we already had. So you would grab one, and then they would start looking for something that was different than that, and grab that. And before long, we had about 10 or 12 different styles of leaves. So then we went back home, and we brought those with us, and the kids were able to go start looking on the internet and looking up leaves, and then trying to decide, is this leaf this tree? And once we did that, you could glue them into a piece of paper. And you label those with each of the leaves, and that begins to help understand what different trees are, at least by the leaves. And then once you do that, then you can go and find the bark, or what the bark looks like, and have them maybe draw the bark structure, and then before long, they're going to be able to identify each of these major trees that are in the forest around them.
I would recommend, instead of just using plain notebook paper for this, this is the time when you maybe pick up a pad of artist paper or a tablet
paper
or something
like
that is just a little bit easier to draw on, something that you could take out with you if you wanted to. I have one of those great big mom purses that you can put books in, because I like books, and it holds, I have coloring books in there, and I have colored pencils in there. I'm not so much for myself. I don't know if I've colored but maybe once or twice myself with them, but they come in handy a lot of times, so that when we're out and about, you can have things, kind of tools ready for that. And of course, your cell phone, take pictures using apps. Pinterest is your friend. You could take those and look them up on Pinterest. Pinterest could tell you how to preserve the leaves. You could do all kinds of experiments with it. And then, of course, like one experiment that I did as a child is to pick different flowers, put them in colored water, and see what happens, because they weren't all the same.
Yes, that's right. You have told me about that experiment.
I love that. It was one of my favorite ones. So, but then it's really important to draw what you've learned. Don't just learn it, but to keep and retain it by making sure it gets in your notebook. So,
Another one that you could do is pressing flowers. Mm-hmm. You could put pressed flowers in, and they could have that as a way to look back on what they've done and enjoy a kind of a project.
Mm-hmm. Get a big heavy book to put them into, and So, let me think. There's some other uses for notebooking would be possibly when your child's having a character issue and you want them to research what does the Bible say about that character issue. You can teach them to use a Strong's Concordance, and then they can write verses about that character issue. Now, a left brain person like me would make a list of verses. Mm-hmm. A right brain issue, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to put up on the screen some pictures of some ways that a friend of mine took verses in the scripture and totally, each verse was its own page, and totally, as you can see, put words all around it and pictures and really made it come alive. I have one daughter that even has a Bible, and you can buy these Bibles that have a lot of space in the margins, and then you can draw all over that. I would fill those margins with words.
Notes, notes and little key elements and lists and things like that.
Another one is for quotes that you hear. You like quotes. You even subscribe to an email list where you get cool American history quotes. Mm-hmm. I don't do that, but that is something you really like. And if you see a quote from history or some famous person that you want to remember.
So like with that, something like that, you could actually, if it's something part of the history unit you're doing, you could put the quote down on paper and then have the kid like draw off things off of it, or draw different aspects of what that quote is talking about, or what they think the quote embodies, or something along that line.
If you've got a child with a sense of humor who might like cartoons and drawing, things like that, you could take George Washington's Rules of Civility and write them in their old 1700s language, and then draw modern day, cartoons around it to see that they understand what the words are. Another one would be grammar. So everybody knows I like diagramming. It's about as visual as I get.
That's her designing right brainness going on.
But I really love it. So, but what we have is we have the kids, the second half of the grammar curriculum, the second semester, we have them make their own notebook. Okay. If you were to look at mine, because I made one myself, it's all words. But it would be the perfect time for a high school student to be putting in a lot of creativity and help them really cement those grammar rules, which grammar rules are about as left-brained as you can get, but a right-brained person could understand them a little better with that, I'm sure. Okay, what are some of the downsides of notebooking? What are some of the things that make every mother go, I'm never doing that? And if you guys have some right now, as we've been talking, put them in the comments.
Yes.
Because I've been thinking some as he said things. I've been like, I would never do that. So put them in the comments.
I would say one thing is it can take quite a bit of time.
Absolutely. That's got to be the number one, Kraig.
Absolutely. So, if you're going through and you're having to take the time for these kids to do the research and to get this information and glue it and all this stuff, that does take quite a bit of time, and it has to be part of their day. It can't be something where you give it 5 minutes and expect them to do a good job, or what you'll get is a bunch of scribbles and that's it.
I'd say a minimum of an hour.
Yeah, you definitely have to put an hour in there, and it's not bad to put structure on a creative person, because sometimes creative people need that, because creative people can just take one thing and just keep going and going and going and going and going on it. So sometimes it's good to, as a parent, to put a structure, a time frame for a creative person that forces them to learn how to
pick.
To pick and choose, and to narrow things down, because otherwise they tend to keep going, and before long, the one quote that you had that was supposed to take 10 minutes is taking the rest of the day, and they haven't gotten to any of their other subjects.
Right. And on the other side, though, someone like me that's like, I know the information, I wrote it down, I want to get on to my other things in my day. We might need to be told, you will stay at this table for an hour. Might as well have fun. Grab your colored pencils, and even I can be creative when I actually just give myself permission to do it.
That's the thing, is giving yourself permission to do it.
Yeah.
And maybe then that's what's good about setting a time too, is it allows someone to have that permission to go ahead and design and take that time to do that.
Now, maybe this is good or bad. As parents, you are allowed to choose what your kids do in their school, but my thinking was, when we were making the curriculum, I'm thinking especially of history and science, that we didn't have time for notebooking every day. So we tended to schedule it for the 4th and 5th day of every week. And the reason for that was we would do all of our reading in these kind of books the first 3 days, and then do the notebooking the 4th and the 5th days. And if you don't have time on the 4th or 5th days, you can rearrange that schedule so that day 1 might start on a Wednesday, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday and Tuesday. And what I would do when my kids were little and I was doing all the grocery shopping and all the house cleaning and everything is I would schedule my things that I needed to do around the house. I would schedule those for when they were doing their notebooking, and I might stay at the table with them for 5 minutes or so and get them started and check on them, but it gave me some time to get things done. So you don't have to do it every day. I wouldn't want anyone to think that there are maybe people out there that be like, please let me do this every day. And that's fine too.
Can I bounce off something there?
Yep.
This is also a great time where you can get your kids going on something like this, and then that would give you opportunity to go do other things if you need to, go take care of something else in the house or deal with the younger children while the older ones are busy doing these things. It gives you, and this is a time that you are together, doing together school, but not necessarily having to have all your focus on your children the whole time that they're involved in this. They can go, and it gives them an opportunity to have independent creative learning going on too.
Yeah, and it really lightens the load for mom. Moms shouldn't feel we have to always have good discussions every single day at every single time. There's a give and take here that sometimes the kids need to be taking care of some of their learning as well.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, when you're going through history, let's say you're doing the reading for the first 3 days of the week, and you're also learning your facts, you're memorizing your timeline facts, you're memorizing your scripture verses, and you're just putting all those pegs on which you're going to hang your learning. You might peek ahead in the curriculum to day 4 and 5 and see what the notebooking assignment is going to be. And when you read through that topic in the curriculum, even though your kids don't know what they're going to be doing later in the week, you might maybe spend an extra minute discussing it with them so that they feel familiar enough with the subject. Because I have not done that quite a few times, and then I'll get to day 4 and say, okay, kids, I want you to do, we did one on the ziggurats. All right, kids, make a ziggurat for your notebooking page. And they just looked at me blank like, make a what?
Can I say something on that? There's a thing that we used to do as part of our education classes, and we were taught to use as a learning tool, and it fits perfectly with what you're talking about right now. It's called KWL.
KWL.
KWL, and it was what you know, what you want to know, and what you learned.
Cool.
Okay, and so with something like this, what you could do early on in the week is, if you look ahead and know what the subject matter is, you can take a moment, like if you were doing it Thursday, Friday, on Tuesday or Wednesday, you could sit there and say, okay, kids, here's a word, ziggurats. What do you know about ziggurats? And if you get blank stares, then you know that probably tasking them to do a creative task on Thursday and Friday without any information is not going to happen.
You're going to have tears.
So that gives you a little bit of time ahead to prepare them and to give them to put some information into them that they can then use to be creative with. There's nothing worse to a creative than being asked to do something on a certain topic or subject and having no idea what that object that is about, because your creativity is stifled by the fact that you don't know anything about the subject you're supposed to be creative about.
Yep, and I like the what do you want to know, because if we have 6, well, we had the most, we have 7 kids, but we had the most ever 6 kids at a time homeschooling, and what they wanted to know about ziggurats would have been very different for all of them, and of course depending on their ages. So that's kind of a fun thing to ask, and that again gives you time to prepare.
So that's KWL.
KWL.
What do you know? What do you want to know? And then at the end, so on Friday when they're all, you're finishing that subject up, you could say, okay, what did you learn this week, kids, about ziggurats? And you can have them talking about that and share, and you can hear what they have picked up during the course of that topic also.
Which brings me to my next point beautifully, and that is, notebooking is no fun if you don't have an audience. Honestly, seriously, if there's no one to look at the work that you've put in, then why do it? So what are some ways we can give our kids an audience for the hard work they've done?
I was just as you were saying this, something really came to me, is if you want to invite grandparents and stuff over, if they're close by, relatives or friends that you know really well, and maybe do kind of almost like a notebooking recital, you know, where the kids have the opportunity to go and show everybody what they've been working on in school and give an opportunity to talk about each of the subjects and have the family or relatives ask them questions
And this
about
puts
it.
grandma at ease, because grandma is always a little bit hesitant about this homeschooling stuff, or this, like, what in the world, you should have put your kids in public school, they're gonna be failures.
Yeah.
And this really helps. It helps you, it helps your kids. Your kids won't know the difference. They'll just be so honest and innocent about it. But meanwhile, grandma's like, ooh, they're pretty smart.
Yeah.
I like this, and even so much as occasionally you might send what they've learned off in the mail to grandma, and not put it in the notebook. Another time I liked, so honey, back when you were working a lot of hours and you were not home all the time, one thing that I always thought was cool is to have a special dinner once a week, and it's honestly perfect to do it for Erev Shabbat on Friday evening. Have the kids tell dad what they've learned, because dad needs to feel like he's a part of their kids' learning too. And if your husband is anything like my husband, he's probably going to get on his soapbox and tell the kids even more, and that's what you want. That's good.
It gives the dad a chance, or whoever, a chance to wax eloquently
Absolutely,
about
be the
what
expert.
they know.
That's exactly what we do want. So that's a good thing. So okay, and even to bring up the point that you want to save these. High school graduation should not be the only time you bring out things like this, but the open house when the child has finally graduated from high school. But honestly, it does show that you've done the work. And for those of you that are needing to make transcripts for high school students, and you as mom have a spell of time that you are not perfect and you don't keep good records of everything you learned and taught them, those notebooks will be handy for you to look back and go, yeah, we actually did cover the periodic table of elements. I completely forgot, but it says we did. There's the notebooking page. I don't remember. But that honestly does help you feel like you have some evidence of what you've taught your children. Let's see if I'm missing anything else. It does ensure that it gives mom confidence. I know we just said this, but it gives mom confidence that her kids are learning. I just feel like in our time, a lot of us have this doubt in the back of our minds that if we had actually sent our kids to public school, would they have come out better? Would there be fewer gaps in their learning? Would they have learned this subject or that subject better? And having this evidence, this hard-cold evidence right in front of you that you really did teach something, you really did discuss it, and to see the difference in the kids as they grow from first grade and their kindergarten notebooks. I mean, kindergarten, they always make notebooks in Word Power. We have them making a page for every letter of the alphabet.
Yep.
My kids, that's some of their favorites.
Really?
Downstairs. They'll go downstairs and they're in the basement. That's where we store ours. And they'll look at them and they'll be like, oh, I remember that page. And it's just fun. But seeing them graduate up through, literary essays and research papers, which are a form of notebooking, frankly. They really are. All the way through that development, it just does does her good.
Yeah.
Bad grammar. All right.
She's done good.
I've done good.
And you can see you've done good also.
Yep. All right. Let's real quick change gears for a second and end on parents. How would notebooking benefit our lives? And I don't call it notebooking in my own life. I call it either in my journal or my planner, but how would right-brained and left-brained parents benefit from having some kind of paper and pen to their life? How?
Well, this is something that I'm really trying to give myself the time and the
permission.
Permission, thank you. Sorry, it couldn't come out.
That's exactly
permission to do more of, and take my wife, who's very good at journaling and words and things like this,
but not pictures.
It's more difficult for me to do these kind of things. I'm kind of also with a lot of creatives tend to be, able to grab different things at different times and just kind of go with the flow a little bit. And sometimes that's not good and not capable of being done when you're talking about day-to-day life and trying to keep things moving forward and getting a schedule and you know, keeping everybody together with you have a lot of kids and stuff doing homeschooling or, you know, activities that you're trying to keep track of and have the time to do. And so with a parent doing these things, you know, we're working on trying to become more organized. When I write things down like this, and it does keep me more focused on things. It allows me to be able to remember, have better recall myself in my life and the things I need to remember. So, and if you have it in a journal, it keeps all that information in a place where you won't forget it or lose it because it's in there. We've been trying, you know, a little bit I've been working with trying to figure out, like my smartphone, where it has apps and stuff that you can write things in or put notes in. I've been trying to figure out how to use that versus maybe paper form things also.
Yeah, but I've been reading research this summer that when we actually use paper and pencil or pen and write with our hands, the research says we remember things better.
Yeah.
And I know in an age of convenience, I've always got my phone with me. It's handy, and I might not be able to find a pen at that moment. I almost feel like getting away from remembering things on my phone, and because I don't want to just write it down. There are some things I actually want to remember, and whether that's the milk that I'm supposed to get at the store, or you know, a thought that came to me that the Father brought to me, and I don't want to lose that. You know, I don't think He keeps giving us thoughts if we're never going to be good stewards of them and remember the ones He's already given us. And there's something about writing that cements those thoughts in, which is why we have copy work in our curriculum for the kids. But moms and dads, as we do our Bible reading and such, we can write down what we've remembered.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the left brain ways of doing it in other sessions of this conference, and you know, I showed you my planner and I showed you some of the ways I do it, but some other ways that you could use it if you are a left brain. My left brain? Yeah, left brain.
Yeah.
I have trouble left
I
and
know.
right.
Well, it doesn't help that you're right-handed and I'm left-handed, and that just throws the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a good sign right there, though. But it just to write down goals, write down things I'm studying, write down things I'm thankful for, write down just even things that I want to remember to teach my kids later in the year. I have a list going for this coming school year. You probably do too, and you should if you haven't already started that. Just because you won't remember it all, and you have so much to keep on your mind. But for you right-brained people, we were talking about bullet journals. I actually did some research. I looked up on Wikipedia. I don't know how authoritative that is, but I don't know much about bullet journals.
Most of the time.
Evidently, it came from a man it was just his personal journaling system. He had ADHD, and he wanted to try to rein in his brain. So he started making all kinds of fancy bullet points, dots, and he had different symbols for different things that he wanted to remember. So he might have a to-do list, would have a certain kind of bullet, and he was artistic, so he liked to draw them. If he wanted to delegate something, he would put it with a different, if he wanted to make a goal, or, you know, he just have different styles, and that's where it came from. But evidently nowadays, you can buy paper instead of being lined. Like, I like lined paper. That's good. But
you can find
grids,
gridded, or dot grids.
Yep. And or graph paper.
That's what. Yeah.
Okay.
That's graph paper. That's what I meant.
Yep.
Yes.
There's just all this different kinds. So experimenting with different kind of paper is a really good thing, and experimenting with the kind of journal that you could carry with you conveniently, whether that's bound or not bound, or has rings or closes up. I mean, there's so many different styles, and it doesn't matter.
There's a guy who's a creative. He's a graphic designer, quite famous one now. And he created a thing called field notes, and they're basically the little notepads that are about so big, and all they are inside is the dot grid. So you can do either the reason you like the dots. A lot of people like the dots better than the full graph paper is because, of course, the graph paper has a ton of lines in there that become a distraction. Where the little dots give you the same reference points, but allow you to not have all of that noise in the background, so to speak, if you're trying to design or draw or do things. But yeah, it's small enough. He a lot of people have pockets, and he had like button-up shirts with pockets all the time, so you could just stick that in there. And anytime he had an idea, kind of like you were saying with your type of journaling, he could just pull it out, doodle a little bit, and stick it back in, and keep going on his day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's just so many different ways you could do that. Back, about 15 years ago, I was a big fan of using the 3x5 cards that had the spiral on the top, and they were all different colors, and so you could put different topics in the different colored sections. And I was constantly wearing an apron because I'm a klutz and I would spill everything. And I just got to I liked aprons, so it just became that thing, and so I always kept that in my pocket. And I could put memory verses on it, to-dos, and a little pen. Having said that, nowadays I'm pretty much just to my cell phone, and probably most of the moms that are watching are more on a cell phone.
Or a tablet
or something. But whatever it is, it needs to be convenient. It needs to be something that you have with you. One of the struggles with journaling and planners for parents, first of all, it takes time. And a lot of moms say, I don't have time to do that. And that may be, but it seems to me that when I take a couple minutes to plan, that it saves me that time and more in the end.
And I will be her witness that as you start doing this and as you become more comfortable with it, yes, it does take time, but it's that whole concept of if you plan what you're doing, it takes less time the rest of the time when you're actually doing the doing. Where if you don't plan and you just kind of going through your life, that tends to take a lot more time to do things, and you actually save time by taking the time to do, to organize yourself.
And again, I think it's something to do with the way our brains work when we write. It just kind of gets all of our brains engaged. I think there's science behind it. I don't have the proof of it, but it does seem like it makes a difference. I have one daughter who is very artistic, and so she would never have a planner like I do with just words. I am addicted to my planner. I'll be honest. I love my planner. If my house burnt down, I'd grab my planner. So just saying, probably
leave the kids.
Anyway, but she says that she likes the kind of journal where you can draw all over it and make it really pretty, and she's more likely to do that. But she said one of the struggles she has is she spends more time decorating it than actually making a to-do list.
And that's a struggle with myself too.
I think we should get together, and I should put all the to-do lists, and you should decorate it, and then we'd have the best of both worlds. And really,
there we go.
That'd be awesome. Except that I'm afraid he'd never give it back because it'd be like 10 hours decorating. Anyway, okay.
Very good.
I think that's basically everything. We do have we have an announcement, I guess, is how we'll close in the future. So everybody knows, or if you've been following us for any time at all, that we've been working on Word Power books this whole more than a year, and they're just about done. And I'm getting to that point where I'm a little tired of Word Power, and I'm eager to get on to the next subject. So the next subjects that we are working on for the next year, our goals are to be spending time in all the STEM subjects, so science, and basically science. And I'm really looking forward to it because one of the things that we as a family are going to do that's a little different, in all of our science curriculum that we've done previously, I did it, and you can tell because even when I tried to make notebooking pages for their worksheets, they're pretty much words. And I tried to be creative, but you can always tell when I did a page because it's words. And anyway, I'm excited because I'm bringing on my husband and I'm bringing on my two oldest children who are very artistic and good at illustrating. And what is one of the things, you said you were going to do some unit studies. Tell us a little bit about what some of your ideas are for unit studies.
Well, I definitely, since being a history buff, history teacher, those kind of things, that is something that's near and dear to my heart. So wanting to do unit studies, like breakout things on specific areas and times. So would that be something like a little bit more detail on, say, something from the Roman Empire, or in the first Roman Empire in the first century, and doing a little bit more into who they were, what they were, how they interacted with the scriptures and things like that, so that you can bring a little bit more life to the Word of God through how you are doing these notebooking of the world that Yeshua and the disciples and would have been living in during that time. And I'm trying to think of some others. And
science, though, I was hoping you would do some for science too.
Yes.
I have it on my list that you're going to do one on rockets.
Yes.
I have one on my list that he's going to do one on boogers that we need to do, and that would be too bad we didn't get that done before COVID.
Yes.
But anyway, we didn't. Anyway, I've got a pile of lists. Maybe he doesn't know what all I have planned for him. But
I know we've talked about them.
Yes, yeah, but we're just waiting for these word power books. They've been pretty graphic intensive too. But anyway, we're working ahead, and these will be things that Homeschooling Torah members can always have access to at any time. Everything that we make, we put up on Homeschooling Torah. But over on Foundations Press, if you're not a Homeschooling Torah member, then we'll give you the opportunity to purchase those individually. So if you just want to have little bits to add to whatever other curriculum you're using, I'm hoping you look forward to that. So anyway, we're just trying to practice what we preach and get everybody involved in the family, in our tribe, like we talked about the other day, and getting everybody inputting.
And have as much opportunity for various styles and different people to be able to feel like they're a part of the conversation and part of the family learning.
Fantastic.